Thank you for being here. Good evening. Welcome to the 2020 Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference Evening Reading Series. My name is Sean Hill, and I'm the conference director. This will be our 8th conference. We're looking forward to another great week of faculty readings. I'm so thrilled to get to do this, given a global pandemic, and that we get to hear Brenda Shaughnessy read tonight. As I said, Sarah Dennison, our conference administrator, and I will moderate the Q&A following the reading. I need to thank a few people and entities before we get to the reading. We, the conference, want to thank the poets collected in the New Poets of Native Nations anthology and Hyde Erdrich, its editor, and Gray Wolf for their generous donation and support of the New Poets of Native Nations Women's Scholarship. We also want to thank an anonymous past MNWC participant for their generous donation in support of the Charles W. Scrutcheon Emerging Writer Scholarship. This conference is supported in part by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Minnesota State Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. So thank you, Minnesotans. And we want to thank Bemidji State University for its support and encouragement. We are grateful for our place in the Northwoods at Bemidji State University, beside the lake known as Bemidji-Gamog, where the river crosses, which has been a sacred gathering place for countless generations of indigenous peoples, including Dakota, Lakota, and Anishinaabeg, who remain the spiritual caretakers and thriving members of the greater community to which we all belong, situated as we are between 3 Ojibwe reservations, Leech Lake, White Earth, and Red Lake. We recognize and support the sovereignty of Native nations. We will continue to work with Indigenous teachers, elders, and youth to protect and honor all of our relationships with the land, all our relatives, and the truth. This evening, I'm grateful that Brenda Shaughnessy will be kicking off our evening reading series. Brenda is the author of 5 poetry collections, most recently, The Octopus Museum. Her 2012 collection, Our Andromeda, was a New York Times 100 Notable Books selection, a finalist for the Griffin International Prize and the Kingsley Tuft Prize. In 2013, Brenda was awarded a Guggenheim Foundation Fellowship. In 2018, she received a Literature Award from the American Academy of Letters and Arts and Letters. Her poems have appeared in Best American Poetry, The Nation, The New Yorker, Paris Review, Poetry Magazine, and elsewhere. She is an associate professor of English and creative writing at Rutgers University, New York. About the Octopus Museum, a Publisher's Weekly reviewer says, Shaughnessy's conceptual work is clever as always, but even more extraordinary is her talent for crafting musical, expressive lines that triumph in their complexity and grace. And with an unparalleled ear for language, Shaughnessy excels at making the tragic transcendent. We give you Brenda Shaughnessy.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. However, I'm not really there with you. I'm here in New Jersey on what was formerly and should be still Lenni Lenape land. And I sit here looking at a screen and imagining your faces, and us all being in a room together. I'm going to start with a little poem to sort of invoke that idea. It's called Visitor. I am dreaming of a house just like this one, but larger and opener to the trees. Nighter than day and higher than noon, and you, visiting, knocking to get in, hoping for icy milk or hot tea or whatever it is you like. For each night is a long drink in a short glass, a drink of black sound water, such a rush and fall of lonesome, no form can contain it. And if it isn't night yet, though I seem to recall that it is, then it is not for everyone. Did you receive my invitation? It is not for everyone. Please come to my house lit by leaf light. It's like a book with bright pages filled with flocks and glens and groves and overlooked by Pan, that seductive satyr, in whom the fish is also cooked. A book that took too long to read, but minutes to unread, that is, to forget. Strange are the pages thus. Nothing but the hope of company. I made too much pie in expectation. I was hoping to sit with you in a treehouse, in a nightgown, in a real way. Did you receive my invitation? Written in haste, before a leaf blinked out, before the idea fully formed. An idea like a storm cloud that does not spill or arrive, but moves silently in a direction, like a dark book in a long life, with a vague hope in a wood house with an open door. So that was from our Andromeda. I'm going to skip around through various books because, oh my gosh, I'm getting no feedback. It's weird. I feel like maybe this is all in my imagination. Okay, I'm going to continue. If you're in my imagination, then that's going to have to just be okay. This is from the Octopus Museum. This book imagines what would happen if octopus overlords took over human civilization, which is sort of like the second worst case scenario. And this poem that I'm starting with is called Identity and Community, or There Is No I in C. And it's a true story. I was in Hawaii, and I was really excited to be in Hawaii because I really wanted to go swimming in the ocean. And when I got there, so Hawaii is really far from New Jersey. Hawaii is like, I don't know, a 10-hour plane trip. And I got all the way there and I got to the ocean's edge and I couldn't believe it. I was too afraid to go in. Have you ever done that to yourself where you're like, I have to do this one thing, and you like move heaven and earth to do it, and you get there and you're like, oh, I'm afraid. That's what happened to me. I did go in eventually. But the poem continues. Identity and community, or There Is No I in C. I don't want to be surrounded by people, or even one person, but I don't want to always be alone. The answer is to become my own pet, hungry for plenty in a plentiful place. There is no true solitude, only. At seaside, I have that familiar sense of being left out, too far to glean the secret, how go in. What an inhuman surface the sea has always open. I'm too afraid to go in. I give no yes. Full of shame, but refuse to litter ever. I pick myself up. Wind has power, sun has power. What is power's source? There's no privacy outside. We've invaded it. There's no life outside empire. All paradise is performance for people who pay. Perhaps I'm an invader and feel I haven't paid. What a waste to have lost everything in mind. Watching 3 mom-like women try to go in, I'm green. I want to join them. But they're not my women. I join them, apologizing. They splash away from me. They're their pod. People are alien. I'm an unknown story, erasing myself with seawater. There goes my honey and fog, my shoulders and legs. What could be queerer than this queer tug lust for what already is, who already am, but other of it? Happens? That kind of desire anymore? Oh, I am that queer thing, pulling and greener than the blue sea. I'm new with envy, beauty washing over itself. No reflection, no claim, nothing to see. If there's anything bluer than the ocean, it's its greenness. It's turquoise blood mixing me. I was a woman alone in the sea. Don't tell anybody, I tell myself. Don't try to remember this. Don't document it. Remember, write down to not document it. I want to read a poem from So Much Since, but before I do that, I want to say thank you to Sean Hill, and thank you to Sarah, and thank you to Sean Cruz. Thank you so much for all of the massive amounts of technological wizardry and work that went into this. Because today I got the chance to have a great conversation with 13 amazing poets and hear an incredible craft conversation. And I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I think this is working really well. So it's brilliant because that was not easy. No one knows how to do this, but incredible. Anyway, I want to say thank you for having me. This is a poem I want to read in honor of Gay Pride Month. This poem is set in the 90s, the mid 90s. There was one year when Melissa Etheridge's song, But I'm the Only One, was like all you heard everywhere. So this celebrates that strange moment. Also a true story, the entire thing. In fact, I'm a little bit in trouble with this poem because I didn't change any of the names. So everybody in here is actually who they really are. And I don't think everybody's thrilled about that. But I'm the only one who'll walk across a fire for you, growled Melissa. That song blared out from all four of our bedrooms' tape decks, often simultaneously, as if that song were the only one we all loved, the only one we could agree on that summer in the Dyke loft. Just when it all started to change, Catherine was moving out to Soho to live with Melanie. So Shiggy's girlfriend DM took her room, but not for long. They broke up, and Michelle moved in shortly after Cynthia came. Tonight, you told me that you ache for something new. This was way before we'd even dreamed we'd have to rent out Shiggy's office to Aaron as a fifth bedroom. Without Catherine, we couldn't afford the loft, but we didn't know that yet. At the time, we thought everyone was poor like us. We weren't the only ones. We all smoked constantly. Anyone could afford to smoke back then. Catherine bummed my last butt, but I know I saw her new carton in the freezer. She didn't want to open it yet, was trying to cut back. This was before we almost got the gas cut off, before we lost electricity, the first of many times. After Justine had been bullied out with her 3 cats, but Kristen, whom we suspected was asexual and not really lesbian, was still hanging on even though she adopted yet another cat into the loft without asking. It was only one more, she reasoned, but we already had Caesar, Amber, Balzac, Gigli, and now Evaluna. Anna and Jackie came by. They were friendly to me, but Jet and Julie weren't. T and J were Click Club. A and J were literary. Then Michelle and Shiggy secretly slept together. A disaster. And Cynthia got kicked out for being bi and bringing a guy to the loft. But that summer, before all that, just after I'd been dumped by the girl I'd moved to New York City to be with, and just after I'd invited my first college girlfriend to come visit me, not sure what I was expecting, but she was the only one willing to fly out. But before I met Natira, our month-long affair wasn't great, but still pretty damn good, and she was the only one I'd liked in a long time. I hadn't met Saida yet, at Jackie's book party. Jackie and Anna, I think, were broken up by then. After Stephanie, but long before Tina, before Jamie had even met Tina. This song played everywhere, every day, ceaselessly, so it started to seem that we were Melissa, that Cassandra, foretelling in a ragged voice, and I'm the only one who'll drown in my desire for you. We meant that we too were willing to do anything to prove we were the only one for someone that one summer. So, back to climate catastrophe. I have a poem here in the Octopus Museum. I'm not going to read the poem that's about the octopus overlords because it's 6.5 pages long, and I think it's just not right for the moment. But I do have a poem called No Traveler Returns. And when I was writing it, what I was thinking was, the feeling of our world falling apart in various ways harkened back to my first sort of heartbreak. Like when you have a catastrophe, you kind of, your mind sort of goes back to all your other catastrophes. And I was really surprised because I was surprised that sort of global climate catastrophe or sort of societal breakdown would actually make me feel completely in touch with a breakup that happened years and years and years ago. This is No Traveler Returns. I was like you once, a sealed plastic bag of water filters floating on the sea. I thought my numbers proved my time and space on Earth. Hang on one second. Hey guys, I'm doing a reading. Sorry. I was like you once, a sealed plastic bag of water filters floating on the sea. I thought my numbers proved my time and space on Earth. I thought having children was a way of creating more love. I thought thoughts I was ashamed to speak in case they were what everyone already thought, or in case they were unthinkable thoughts nobody would dare think, much less say, which would blow up the world everyone else had to live with if I said them. I muddled that distinction to extinction, pure silence, not a piece of peace, and a breathlessness, not of wonder, but black throat, choking on backwash. Once a wild, tentacle screaming creature, every inch a kissed lip of a beloved place. A true and relentless mind, all heart, if heart is a dumb hope of a reusable pump. What was it you said that made me think I was like you once? Remember the last terrifying moments? You clenched up and wanted me to be completely open. We'd broken up. Remember such terms? Such luxury? We thought breaking up a kind of preservation. To cut off circulation, decided to sever at the place where our hair had grown together. An axe. A pair of kitchen scissors. That rusty axe, fully fatigued, and scissors which cut raw chicken bacteria into everything it touched. Nothing did the trick. To come apart, we'd have to come together. And so I tried to make you come. You said it was our last time and you'd remember it. You cried out, then I cried out. And I hardened against you, then softened, then wished we could go back. Wanted to love you like before. Twisted myself like nobody's pair of wires. Did you try to make me come and I couldn't, wouldn't? Or did I give you that and let you let me go? And there will be no other way to be once this way's gone. That last song on Earth, the last jelly bean, last because nobody wanted it, or everybody sang it till the end. Once this day November's over, never another. Each day nothing like the last except that it's the last and that's new too. Each moment broken glasses, a covered mirror, foxed. The waste stays in place, the rest disappears, the unrest too. There's no way to follow my own mind. My own mind is not leading. I'm unleaded. I'm gasoline. I'm everything in between, this flame and that attracted wind. I forgot my glasses. How will we drink? Seeing isn't believing. If I believe I see better with something I can so easily forget. And what if I can't forget? I forgot the heft and squirm of my own baby in my arms, in my own womb. I'll forget anything and call it an accident. Matched to fuel and breathing it all in as if I'm living normally from day to re-registered day. Why is it, if I can only remember what I myself experienced, that I can also forget what I experienced? Who records the records and collects the recollections? I had that baby in my womb for 39 weeks, for 3/4 of a year. A full calendar minus summer, an unforgettable summer, each day fucking endless. Oh, I know all the numbers. Everything adds up. I've never seen my womb, but the doctor has. I never saw that doctor again. This is also a true story. It is a 3-line poem. It happened to me in Portland, Oregon around 2008. It's called The Dessert I Didn't Have. Grilled peaches on shortbread with raspberries and black pepper ice cream. We're all out, said the communicative waiter. 12 years ago. And counting. This is thinking lessons. No one is one. No one is no one. Is writing an act of listening? Or is to listen merely to passively search another for a portal to oneself? But portal lets anything through and nothing stays. I love what's sublime, beauty greater than my sense of beauty. Red is the color of surfacing from the inside, eyes closed. My child does not belong to me. She belongs to herself, but she's too young to have a child. What is a new way to learn? Could I ever answer and still keep my questions? What are the most important questions other than this one? This poem is called Blueberries for Cal, and it's special to me because I had finally escaped these children that I had to take care of all the time, and I got a chance to go to the McDowell colony. This was a few years ago when I was writing this book. And I was so excited because I finally got my freedom, and I was had all this space. I didn't have anything I had to do except write, and I couldn't write. I couldn't write for days and days, and I was horrified and mortified. Finally, I said to myself, I keep thinking of this weird, silly scene from my home life, not my writing life, but a scene in which I threw a birthday party for my daughter. And you know how you have a birthday party for a little kid and you get all the junk food and cake and stuff. And then you also think like, I should provide some fruit. So I put up some, bowls of blueberries and, bananas and stuff, strawberries. Anyway, I look over at this birthday party and there's this kid, Henry, who's just shoveling blueberries into his mouth. And I was like, for some reason I couldn't stop thinking about it at McDowell. And I thought, one of the things about writer's block or not being able to write is that you have to write what's right in front of you. Like whatever's right there presenting itself to you, even if you don't like it. I did not want to write a poem about kids and blueberries. I wanted to write about, other things. But sometimes when it presents itself, you have to write it. So I wrote this poem called Blueberries for Cal. You might remember a beautiful children's book called Blueberries for Sal. Blueberries for Cal. Watching little Henry, 6, scoop up blueberries and shovel them into his mouth, possessed. I'm so glad I brought blueberries. Wish my kids would eat them. Cal can't. Simone won't. Henry's sisters, Lucy and Jane, took turns feeding each other goldfish crackers and sips of juice, arms around each other's neck and back. Tiny things. I wish my daughter had a sister like that. And my son a nervous system that let him walk and munch berries. Sometimes I can't bear all the things Cal doesn't get to do. I want to curse everything I can't give him. Admire, compare, despair. That's not the most real feeling I'm feeling, is it? I feel joy in Henry's joy. Blueberries for the child who wants them. there's all this energetic sweetness, enough to go around, to give and taste and trust. More than enough. For Cal, too. I want to remember this. My children seem to subsist on music and frosting. Where there's frosting, there's cake. Where there's music, someone chose to make a song over all other things on this earth. And I'll finish the reading with a real summer bummer. Look, I feel like my life has taken a tremendous turn of hopefulness. I feel the energy from all the protests. I feel the energy from all the revolutionary spirit that's sort of out there. We're not gonna be putting up with this much longer. It's done. We're sick of it. Our world must change. Racism must be addressed. Cops must be stopped. It can't go on. And I'm feeling a tremendous surge of maybe we can make it better. Part of that hopelessness that I felt before was really, what they were doing, what ICE was doing, really, what ICE was doing on the borders, and the way that people felt that they could treat folks, trying to emigrate, was really so upsetting, and it made me feel very hopeless. Like, that's what we're doing? We're putting people in cages, separating kids? What are we doing? And it made me think for sure that we had that our world really had no low, like no bottom to the low, that would keep dropping. And I thought, what would it be like if we had to move, if we had to be on the run, if we were fugitives, if we were refugees, if we had to get up and just pack up and leave? What happens if, there's so many scenarios in which case that would happen, and it's really not very far off from our current reality. What would it mean if I had to run with my family? And this is the last poem I'm going to read, and it uses all my family's real names. Cal is now 13. When I wrote this, he was 11 or 10. And Simone is my daughter, and Craig is my partner. This is our family on the run. Everything organized around Cal in his wheelchair. He can't walk, and I can't carry him far. We'd have the wheelchair van as long as we could find gas. Simone in the side seat, Craig and me in the front. Maybe spray paint a super soaker metallic silver to look like a real weapon. Load the car up with cans of enteral food for Cal's G-tube. Maybe a 6-week supply, plus a go backpack full of cans, extensions, spare Mickey button. 3 days of food for the rest of us. We'll find water. Sleeping in the front seats, taking turns on watch. Simone curled up next to the gas can and Ziploc of batteries, cords, chargers, with her one stuffed animal we have to worry about something happening to, her only toy. And what if we lose the car? Running on some side road to Pennsylvania, airport, Atlantic, evacuation center, relocation camp, as yet unknown. Trying to buy a blow-up raft for 4 people, can't take the wheelchair. Our stack of euros to buy 4 plane tickets, can't take the wheelchair. On foot, trying to get to a friend's country home, promise of a bedroom. No way to call the friend for directions. A compass one of the kids got at a birthday party wound up under a car seat. Lucky. Lucky too, Simone can walk. Though she gets tired, and I'd want to hoist her on my back if I didn't have to save my energy to carry Cal when Craig's legs gave way. He's back out. Cal, 4'6" and 60 pounds of tween, who must be carried if we somehow lose that wheelchair. Or the wheelchair breaks, or is stolen, or gets a flat tire, or rusts. It's red, a color Cal chose by smiling when we said red in a list of colors. No expression when we said green, blue, black, purple, or pink. Big smile when we said red. He had his choice and he made it. How strange that the color of his wheelchair ever mattered enough to anyone to offer him that handful of options. Simone is hungry. I give her a Cliff Bar, that 24-pack I bought for rushed mornings, and she drops half of it in the dirt road, which is covered in what? Bone dust? Or atomized drywall? She grabs what she dropped and stuffs it into her mouth before I can stop her. Why would I stop her? The side of the road is the well-known gutter of desperation always included in stories about wars, where many people have to move on foot to the next terrible place. No matter what the emergency, whenever people are forced to flee, you find piece by piece how their understanding of their situations changed. If you read the stories, you're supposed to find abandoned photo albums, suitcases, babies, the useless things cut out by survival's swift knife, dead weight, long gone. You never find food, bottled water, working flashlights, live batteries, shortwave radios. It's true what all those stories said, it turns out. Eventually, out of water and arms shredded, I carry Cal, Craig carries me, and Simone carries us all. Almost 7 years old. She is so strong and has some Cliff Bars stuffed in a bag. The notebook with all our information is long lost. She knows where she's going. How does she know that? She runs ahead and carries us, her heart pounding and breaking with the weight and strain of all of us in there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Oh, wow. I think we might have to rethink what we're doing. Maybe, I don't know. Now, I wanted to unmute myself and just like and like all this stuff and give you the feedback. We'll think about it as we're thinking about what you just gave us. That was a lot. Thank you.
It's probably too much.
No, not at all. So if those of you in the audience have any questions, please post them in the Q&A. There are 100 participants here. Yeah, we will read them for you. 101.
If you have questions, post them in the Q&A below. There's one.
Michael Olson wants to know what was the title of the last poem.
Oh, that was called Our Family on the Run. It's the final poem in the Octopus Museum. And it's I don't know how other people process their art, or how you process your own life and kind of catalyze it when you write, but it was very intense and necessary to sort of actually use my real family and kind of imagine that, because otherwise I feel like I had kept that imagining at arm's length. I could always imagine it was somebody else or some other nation, some other family. Maybe I knew someone who knew someone, but it was never me. And I owed it to sort of the seriousness of the situation to, to make it be my actual family with the actual names. Although I made the mistake of reading this at a reading in Provincetown with my kids there, and my son was pissed. And I was like, I made it up. Mommy imagined it.
Right.
Awful. Anyway, a lot more questions I see.
Yes. Danielle wants to know what your writing process is like.
It's like nothing at the moment. Like a big old zero. Do you notice how I made that zero into my head? I haven't been writing, but I really depend on some private time. I depend on absolute quiet. I often tell my students, one of the most important, the first rule of writing is it doesn't write itself. And it's just sort of amazing how I can't even like absorb that. Like, I think that it writes itself somehow. I think if I have an idea, it's kind of writing, but it's not. You have to write it. It has to make it onto the page, either typing, you have to do this, or it's not writing. So my writing process is like It's not great. In better days, when I have, you know, what I need, I like to write on big pieces of paper
Mm.
so that I can decouple anything, any sort of, if I write one line after another, it tends to be a little bit too easy, and I can sort of see new relationships if I can sort of delineate, unlineate my thoughts.
There's a question, I guess sort of goes with that question. How do you synthesize current events into poems? How do you take care of yourself while you're interrogating these complex subjects? So, two questions there.
I find sometimes that when you become very aware of what's going on around you, you start seeing the connections as a human, and also as a writer, you start seeing how it connects. Like, oh, the police situation connects with this, and that connects with this, and like you start seeing how everything's a huge web of horror and lies, and then it's hard to like stop with one thing, right? Then you're like, wait, I was writing about this one thing, but now it's like a little bit unfocused. I have that problem tremendously. I usually try to worm out of it. I try to wiggle out of it by allowing an emotional field to enter the page, and then like have really no rules about what are permissible emotions. But I find I have to address political realities through that subjective lens. Um, I I shy away horribly from the idea of having to be a commentator on what's happening, because I believe so strongly in perspectival histories. I can't, you know, we can't look at the protest and then imagine that I'm like a drone above the protest making comments about the protest. Like, that's not art, and that's not my perspective. I only have this vessel. It's just my emotional, intellectual, lived self. I have to use that to get there. And so um, I'm not saying it has to be a navel gazing thing, but the subject has to look, this subject has to look out. And it's hard, right? Because there's this way where like, why would you say anything unless you already know everything about what you're talking about, you know? But then again, why if you already know what you're talking about, why would you have to speak? Shut up. You know everything. So in many ways, I only take on what I can see, sense, understand. That poem, Our Family on the Run, was really, it happened, I wrote it because of that photograph of the Syrian father holding the baby in the raft. Do you remember that picture? That picture made me realize that's not him. That's any of us. And what the fuck was I thinking? It wasn't any of us. And suddenly the whole scene of that happening to my family was immediate to me. And that was one of those poems that didn't require a lot of rewriting. It happened. But anyway, I think I answered that question maybe.
Asks, how do you choose how and when to reveal other people's stuff?
I know. Well, like I said, that the reason why I wrote that sort of that Dyke Loft poem, and it's just really funny because it's not like, I probably, like, if it was just Catherine and Michelle, I probably could have gotten away with it, but you can't really get away with it if it's like Shiggy and DM, you know, like those are obvious, those are people who are singular. I felt like it was long enough ago where I could, and I think that I'm going to have to change my policy about my kids because they are old enough now to be annoyed. I don't ever use anybody else's life story as mine. But there are characters featured in various poems. I do think that I take a little bit too much ownership of my children's names in my work, and I might have to stop that. But it's so fun because I can talk through them. But I don't know. I mean, there's a poem in So Much Synth, which takes on, it's sort of a study of Alexander McQueen. Incredibly moved by that designer's vision of like grotesquerie and beauty, and the fact that he killed himself. It's just like, it really, I don't know. I'm wondering if the fact that he committed suicide, if I felt like I had more access to his life, like, well, you're not using this life, so I'm going to use it. Maybe that's incredibly cruel. But I do think that I would be more careful if it were a living person. Like, in many ways, you have to be careful, just like you have to be careful if you're using a person, anyone else's life. Like, you know how in olden days, whenever they would commission portraits, like, you know, if you were a painter, you had to kind of make the Duke look good, you know? You can't have that pressure in a poem. You can't have to make the Duke look good in your poem. But then again, I have pages and pages of sort of hate poetry directed at various members of this administration in my notebook. Can I make those beautiful? Can I make those art? I don't think I'm willing to. I can't. It's a block.
Go ahead, Sean.
There was a question that's wanted you to talk more about this moment and how it's impacting your writing and creative energy, but I think you kind of said a little bit about that just now.
Mm-hmm.
There's another one. Love this reading. How did you take each of these personal situations and make them so universal?
Oh, yeah. I was just talking about this today with my workshop. That is how you make it universal, is by making it personal, right? So, you know, this example, you don't talk about, you know, the experience of love and peace. You talk about, like, you know, lying there with one pair of arms around you and what that feels like, that moment, with that sliver of moonlight coming in through your window. Like, that's love and peace. It's just that one experience. It's not like, you know, this grand thing, because nobody can enter a remote, vague idea. No one can really feel that. It always comes down to the singular and to the individual. And that's why I talk a lot in my classes about the objective correlative and about the senses, because I feel like in poems, if you as a poet can use your gifts to describe what something really feels like to you, you can actually access another person's sensory system and, like, actually help them feel that, make them feel that, allow them to feel that, which is basically like science fiction, you know? It's like almost getting a chip implanted in your neck.
Right.
I mean, like, when I was in my 20s, I worked at Kinko's in the era of when you go to Kinko's to send a fax. Do you remember this? Like, you didn't have fax machines at home. You didn't do it electronically. You had to go and this lady came and she's handed me her driver's license and I need this faxed. And so I faxed it and gave her the confirmation sheet and handed her back her license. And she said, "Didn't you send that?" I'm like, "No, we don't have the ability to send the actual physical license over the air like that. This is a facsimile machine. It's facsimile." And she couldn't get it. But poetry really does have this ability. You actually can send a physical, at least a sensation. You know, I can describe, and I think about always the Jack Gilbert poem, Michiko Dead, where he's holding the box. You know, how does he handle his grief? He goes like someone carrying a box and he won't put the box down. He just finds new ways to hold it. That metaphor is what it feels like to not only be grieving and be burdened by that, but be unwilling to relieve yourself of the burden because it means losing the person finally. Like, that's a big idea, but you have to get at it. You can only get at it through the body and from an actual lived experience. Did I end too far from the beginning?
No.
Okay.
There's a question on here that's down a little bit that asks, today we talked about why poetry, and she wants to ask you that. This is from Carrie Bassett. Why poetry, and your poetry is quite narrative, so how can you defend it as poetry to someone who might challenge you on it? So thinking in terms of form.
Ooh, my poetry is not entirely narrative. There's a way that like I think it's important to go in and out of, it's not a story. It's a set of impressions. It's narrativizing, but it doesn't mean that it's like that the story is. I'm a big fan of sentence fragments in poems, which are kind of little splashes and like kind of anti-narrative. Each poem is different. I call myself a poet because I look at meaning at the level of the word, the sound of the word, the way the music flows through the syllables. And I mean, one mustn't be fooled by the prose poetry nature of this kind of. I randomly put like this. I know that looks like prose. I understand that, but it's not. It's there. The prose poetry form in here is meant to look boxy. You see how boxy that looks? It looks like it's all very rectangular because this is a museum. This is a museum of exhibits. So that's supposed to mimic a kind of frame you might see on a wall. So there's a visual and sort of sensory reason for why that looks like prose. But I think it's funny to be called a narrative poet because I wish so much that I could write a big old novel, because that seems to be like where all the fun is, but at least money-wise. but I don't think that I can, because I'm really stuck with the sort of the moment. Like I'm a poet because of the moment that happens, the moment after moment after moment. Maybe they build up into something, maybe they become a little bit of a story, and maybe they become a vignette or a collection of vignettes that become something bigger, but I don't know. I hope that wasn't too contentious.
Oh, that was wonderful. That was a really thoughtful answer. Thank you.
There have been a few questions wondering about your writing heroes or sheroes, or who you turn to for inspiration, what books you read for inspiration, those kinds of things. So,
I was just, I pulled a bunch of books out of this shelf to show my class of who I'm really excited about right now and what the books I'm really excited about right now. For my, right at this moment, like what's like in my, like next to my bed stack, which keeps falling over, is Rachel Eliza Griffith's Seeing the Body, Natalie Diaz's Post-Colonial Love Poem. I'm really excited to read. I haven't cracked it yet, but I'm excited to read Eduardo Corral's new book. It's right here, Guillotine. And I am excited to read James Richardson's new book from Copper Canyon. So James Richardson is kind of, I mean, he's an experienced poet, but he, I think he flies under the radar a little bit, but he's a major aphorist. So I think that reading aphorisms is also really useful for poets because it helps you get the idea, like what's a killer line? How are you going to end this? How are you going to begin it? An aphorism can sometimes, like learning how to write them can be really something. Also, he's really big in Finland as an aphorism, because I guess aphorisms are big in Finland. I'm excited about a debut poet called Jameson Fitzpatrick. Wrote a book called Pricks in the Tapestry. I'm excited about Monica de la Torre's book Repetition 19. I'm looking over here because I just put them all right there so that I could see them again, but they got misshelved in my absence. Who are my heroes? They change. I think one of the most constant shero I have is Lucille Clifton, who has her words just sort of follow, like they sort of shadow my thoughts. I'll have a thought and I'll suddenly think about a line of hers. She did a really interesting thing with that lowercase business. It really sort of sneaks right in between your thoughts. Like it's not, you think it's like, oh, I'm just a small thought, but actually it somehow like gets in.
right.
So good. Lucille is a big deal to me. I was really formed by a lot of visual artists. I loved E. Cummings so much. I was like, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with words.
Mhm.
That was pretty profound. Um, I have a lot because it's been many, many years of reading and writing and loving work. And so I'm also, it's like a sieve, like things fall out. I can't remember. Um, but I, yeah, I'm trying to think and I'm just going to waste our time.
There's a question that ties in, I think, maybe with you talking about narrative and not being a narrative poet, and sort of maybe process. It says, you place many different items, activities, actions in a poem. How do you combine them? They seem to go together. So,
Yeah, I don't know what that means, combining actions. I mean, a lot of the poems are thinky, a lot of them are in memory. Um, but that's the amazing thing about writing a poem, right? You can have it like this very solitary, static space, but you can remember or write down sort of a time when you were like all over the place. I'm obsessed with time. And I remember when my friend, the poet Michael Dickman, um, mentioned that he was obsessed with time. And I rolled my eyes at him and said, join the club of everybody. Everyone's obsessed with time. It's not special. Um, but no, I can't stop thinking about it. And so time is the thing. You can, if you sit there and you put, you could sit there and because of the magic of time, you can think of what it was like when you were 3 years old, riding your tricycle and falling in the middle of the street. And then suddenly remember like, oh, right. I forgot to return that library book last week. Or I also have a Zoom meeting now. There's a way that like everything gets crunched together. No one's really doing that much, but it seems like it in writing.
I have one here that just came up. It's a process question again, kind of bouncing back to that. What are some of your rituals in terms of writing rituals as far as how you prepare for the page?
Yeah, my only real ritual is hiding from the kids. Just get away from them. As long as I can get away from them, I can do stuff.
That's a follow-up question on here too, is about how to manage that.
No way. There's no way to do it. Just I don't know. I say that, and yet I have written books. Maybe in spite of them. One ritual I think I do have is I do like reading or watching a movie. Like, and I don't mean a movie where everybody's like shooting and exploding. I mean a movie where you're actually thinking about something. A recent movie I saw that really made me think a lot was Portrait of a Lady on Fire. It really made me think. I was like, oh, I want to write. If you can watch something or read something that makes you, or even listen to music that makes you want to write, that's a good ritual to have. How to know it's going to make you want to write, that's harder. Because of course music gets a little repetitive. It doesn't have the same zing. If you say like, this is my writing music, I'm going to put it on. I did that too, and I ruined Philip Glass's Etudes by writing to it too much. Now it's like all heavy with previous writings. But yeah, my ritual would be to try to find something to inspire, so I don't have to sit there for like 2 hours going, what's something? What's something to write? Because I find that's upsetting. You can't think of anything. But it's rare to find the right inspiration. I think one ritual that's important to think about is almost an anti-ritual. How detrimental to writing the news feed and the social media feed and the constant barrage of it, how detrimental that is one thing that I think will like wipes away whatever ritual you have. It is the thing that will make it so hard to write, but it's also so hard to get rid of. And in this moment, I think the other day I didn't watch the news or look at Twitter or anything for like 3 hours, and I missed everything. Like I missed like the 18 things happened. What? Bolton did what? What happened? Barr did what? You can't. So right now we're sort of in this terrible space, but really you do have to kind of unplug. That would be a ritual.